The HOA thought they could humiliate one family in front of the whole neighborhood. They didn't know the woman they targeted trained the very officers they were calling. In Oak Ridge Estates, rules were treated like religion. Grass height, mailbox color, even where kids could ride bikes, everything had a fine attached. The HOA president, Marla Vance, loved control more than peace. And when Ethan and his wife, Claire, moved into the corner house near the cul-de-sac, Marla saw a new target. Claire was calm, private, and always polite. She waved, smiled, and avoided drama. But she also didn't bow. When Marla demanded they remove a small flag from the porch because it wasn't approved decor, Claire simply said, "It's staying." That one sentence turned the air cold. Soon, violation letters arrived like clockwork. Trash bin visible. Car parked too long. Unauthorized visitor. Ethan tried to reason with them, but Marla didn't want compliance, she wanted surrender. And the neighbors watched, afraid to become next. Then came the meeting notice: emergency HOA hearing for repeated violations. Marla planned a public takedown. Claire attended in a simple blazer, hair tied back, eyes steady. Marla smirked, reading accusations like a prosecutor. The room felt heavy. Ethan squeezed Claire's hand under the table. When Claire finally spoke, her voice didn't shake. "You're abusing your authority." Gasps. Marla's face tightened. "Excuse me?" Claire leaned forward. "I'm requesting all communications in writing, and I'm requesting the HOA's legal counsel present before you escalate." Marla laughed. "Oh, we will escalate. In fact." She held up her phone. "I've already contacted the police. You'll learn what happens when you disrespect this community." The room went silent as everyone heard the call connect. And Claire didn't flinch. She simply whispered to Ethan, "Let them come." The patrol car arrived fast, lights flashing like a warning to the whole street. Marla stood outside the clubhouse like she owned the pavement, arms crossed, ready for her victory moment. Neighbors peeked through blinds, phones quietly recording. 2 officers stepped out. One was young and cautious. The other, older, scanned the crowd with calm authority. Marla rushed forward. "Finally! She's been threatening the HOA, refusing lawful orders, and creating a hostile environment." The younger officer looked confused. "Ma'am, what exactly happened?" Marla pointed at Claire like she was dangerous. "She's been defiant for weeks. Tonight she accused me of abuse and demanded legal counsel. I want her removed from the premises." Claire walked out slowly, hands visible, expression steady. "Officer, may I speak?" Marla snapped, "No. She's manipulative." The older officer raised a hand. "Let her speak." Claire took a breath. "This is a civil matter. The HOA is retaliating because I refused to remove a personal item from my property. I have records of every violation letter and the harassment pattern." The younger officer shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, HOA disputes usually aren't criminal." Marla's smile faded. "But she threatened me." Claire didn't raise her voice. "I said she was abusing authority." "That's not a threat. That's a statement." Marla's face reddened. "Arrest her for disorderly conduct." The older officer looked at Claire more closely. Something about her posture, her calm control, made him pause. "What's your name, ma'am?" "Claire Mason." The older officer froze for half a second, just long enough for the room to feel it. His eyes widened, then softened into recognition. "Claire Mason?" Claire nodded once. The officer's shoulders straightened like he had been called into formation. "Ma'am, are you Instructor Mason from the county training unit?" Marla blinked. "What?" Claire's voice stayed gentle. "Yes. I supervise de-escalation training and ethics modules." The older officer swallowed, suddenly respectful. "You trained half my team last year." A ripple moved through the crowd. Phones lifted higher. Marla stuttered. That doesn't matter." "She still." The older officer turned to Marla, voice firm. "It matters a lot. Because you called us here expecting an arrest, and I'm not seeing a crime. Marla's confidence cracked. Claire remained calm, but her eyes carried a warning. This wasn't over, and then the older officer asked the sentence that changed everything. HOA president. Do you have your board's attorney on record for these actions? Marla's mouth opened, but nothing came out. She had expected sirens, handcuffs, and a humiliating walk to the patrol car. Instead, she stood exposed, like someone who had played a loud game and suddenly realized the rules were real. The older officer turned to his partner. This is not a criminal matter. We're leaving. Marla lunged forward. No. You can't just leave. She disrespected authority. Claire's voice stayed calm. Authority isn't a costume, Marla. That sentence hit harder than shouting ever could. The neighbors murmured. Marla's cheeks burned, the officers left, but the damage stayed. That night, Marla sent a mass email. The HOA will pursue legal action for harassment and intimidation. She wanted to rewrite the story before it spread, but Claire had already prepared for this moment. The next morning, a certified letter arrived at the HOA office. It wasn't angry. It wasn't emotional. It was surgical. A formal notice requesting records, violation logs, complaint sources, meeting minutes, board votes, and any communication related to the Mason household. At the bottom was a single line: failure to comply will be interpreted as intentional obstruction. Marla read it twice, hands trembling. She tried to regain control by issuing a fine $2,500 for community disruption. She posted it publicly on the HOA portal like a trophy. Ethan wanted to fight back loudly. Claire stopped him. We don't win by yelling, she said. We win by showing patterns. Then Claire did something Marla didn't expect. She didn't just defend herself, she protected everyone. Claire knocked on doors quietly. She listened to stories. A widow who had been fined for garden decorations. A young couple threatened for parking their work truck. A veteran shamed for a wheelchair ramp. People had been suffering in silence because Marla made them feel alone. Claire gathered statements, dates, screenshots, and photos. Not to start chaos, but to end it. One evening, Ethan found Claire in the kitchen, staring at a thick folder. This is bigger than us. She whispered. Ethan nodded. So what's the plan? Claire looked up, eyes steady. We request a special election. And we expose what the HOA has been hiding. But Marla wasn't finished. She needed one final power move. She needed a moment so loud it would scare everyone back into obedience, so she called in a compliance enforcement team and scheduled it for Saturday morning when the entire neighborhood would be home. And as the sun rose over Oak Ridge Estates, a tow truck and 2 security vehicles rolled toward the Mason driveway. Claire watched from the porch, silent. Then she reached for her phone. Bring the body cams, she told someone on the line. They're about to cross the line. Saturday morning felt like a staged scene. The tow truck stopped right in front of the Mason home, and 2 private security guards stepped out wearing uniforms that looked official enough to confuse people from a distance. Marla arrived behind them, smiling like she was about to win a public war. Neighbors gathered on sidewalks, whispering. Phones were out again. Marla lifted her clipboard. Unauthorized vehicle. Repeated violations. We're towing. Ethan stepped forward. That's my work truck. It's legally parked on my property. Marla's smile sharpened. Not according to HOA bylaws. One guard approached the truck. Sir, step aside. Claire walked down the steps slowly. Before you touch that vehicle, she said, identify your authority. The guard frowned. HOA enforcement. Claire nodded once. Show your state license. And show written authorization signed by the board. Marla snapped, you don't get to demand anything. Claire's voice stayed level. Yes, I do. Because you're using private security to impersonate official authority. And that's illegal. The guard hesitated. The tow driver looked nervous. Marla's eyes widened. No one is impersonating anyone. Claire held up her phone. Then you won't mind that this is recorded. Along with the neighborhood witnesses. Marla tried to push forward. Tow it now. That's when a second car pulled up unmarked, clean, quiet. Two real officers stepped out, body cams visible. The crowd went still. Marla's confidence returned for half a second. Officer. Great. Arrest her. She's interfering with enforcement. The officer didn't look at Claire first. He looked at the guards. Who are you? The guard mumbled, private security. Are you representing yourself as law enforcement? No, Claire spoke softly. They're wearing badges designed to look official. Marla hired them to pressure homeowners. Marla's head snapped. Lies. The officer turned to Marla. Ma'am, did you authorize this tow? Yes. HOA has power. The officer's tone turned firm. HOA does not have power to tow from private property without proper legal process. Marla's face tightened. But, and, the officer added, we received a complaint about harassment and false representation. The neighborhood murmured again, louder now. Marla looked around and realized she was no longer feared, she was being watched. Claire stepped closer, calm as daylight. This is what abuse looks like, she said. When someone thinks rules are weapons. The officer asked, do you have legal counsel present? Marla's voice cracked. I don't need, but she did. Because Claire had already filed something bigger than a complaint, that afternoon, a notice was posted across Oak Ridge Estates, special HOA meeting requested by homeowners. Emergency vote scheduled. Marla stared at it like it was a death sentence, and then she saw Claire standing nearby holding the folder. Claire didn't smile. She simply said, now it's the community's turn to speak. The special meeting was packed. Oak Ridge Estates hadn't seen this many residents in one room in years. People who never spoke at meetings were suddenly standing shoulder to shoulder, holding printed emails, screenshots, and fine notices like proof of survival. Marla sat at the front table. Stiff, jaw clenched, pretending she still controlled the room. But the fear in her eyes betrayed her. She knew what was coming. Claire stood in the center aisle, not like a fighter, but like someone carrying truth. This isn't personal, she began. This is about accountability. Marla laughed bitterly. You're turning neighbors against each other. Claire didn't raise her voice. No. Your behavior did that. Then Claire revealed the documents, board minutes with missing votes, fines issued without due process, selective enforcement, and one shocking detail: Marla had been approving vendor contracts to companies connected to her cousin. Landscaping, towing, security. All overpriced? All recurring. The room erupted. That's fraud. Someone yelled. We paid for this. Marla stood up, shaking. This is defamation. She's lying. Claire turned to the board members. If I'm lying, release the full financial records. The board members avoided eye contact. A neighbor named Mrs. Grant, quiet for years, finally spoke. My husband passed away last winter. Marla fined me for leaving a memorial wreath on my door. Another man stood. They threatened to lien my house because my grass was half an inch too tall. A young mother cried. They shamed my child for chalk drawings. One by one, voices rose. Not angry, hurt. The kind of hurt that had been locked away to keep peace. Claire didn't create chaos. She gave pain a microphone. Marla's mask cracked. You people are ungrateful. I keep property values high. Claire answered softly, you kept fear high. Then came the vote. The HOA bylaws allowed removal by majority. The ballots were counted in silence so heavy it felt like a storm. The result hit like thunder. Marla was removed as president. Two board members resigned immediately. Marla stood frozen. You can't do this, she whispered. Claire looked at her. We just did. But the story didn't end with a vote. Because Marla wasn't just losing power, she was losing control of what she'd hidden. As residents left, Claire approached the county officer who attended as an observer. She handed him a sealed envelope. What's this? He asked. Claire's eyes stayed steady. A formal complaint with supporting evidence. Vendor kickbacks. False enforcement. And the incident with private security. The officer's expression changed. This is serious. Claire nodded. It should be. Marla overheard and spun around. You wouldn't dare. Claire didn't flinch. I teach officers ethics, Marla. I don't protect bullies. Marla's knees weakened. For the first time, she realized this wasn't a neighborhood fight, this was a legal storm, and outside the clubhouse, the tow company owner waited, holding his own paperwork. He stared at Marla and said quietly, "We need to talk about those invoices." In the weeks that followed, Oak Ridge Estates felt different, like a neighborhood waking up from a long nightmare. People waved again. Kids rode bikes without whispers. Curtains opened. The fear that once lived in mailboxes and violation letters slowly faded, but Marla didn't fade quietly. She tried to rewrite history online, posting in community groups, "I was removed unfairly." She claimed Claire used connections to intimidate the HOA. But the truth had receipts, and receipts don't care about excuses. The county began reviewing HOA financials. Vendors were questioned. Contracts were audited. And when the tow company owner finally spoke, everything snapped into place. He admitted the HOA had been paying extra fees for priority enforcement. The money trail led straight to Marla's cousin's business account. The community realized their dues hadn't just funded landscaping. They had funded Marla's control. One evening, Marla showed up at the Mason home uninvited. Standing at the end of the driveway like she was still in charge, Ethan stepped out first. "You need to leave." Marla's eyes were wild. "You ruined me." Claire walked beside Ethan, calm. "No, Marla. Your choices did." Marla's voice dropped. "You think you're better than everyone because you train cops?" Claire's expression softened, not with pity, but with clarity. "I train them so they don't misuse power." "That's what you did here." Marla's hands trembled. "I was protecting the neighborhood." Claire shook her head. "You were protecting your ego." Marla's face twisted. "I can still make your life hard." Claire didn't move. "Not anymore." She handed Marla a folder. "This is a no-contact notice. You step onto our property again, it becomes trespassing. And yes, I'll report it." Marla stared at the paper like it burned, then, in a desperate final attempt, she whispered, "You don't understand. I needed those fees. I was drowning." For a moment, the wind carried silence. Claire spoke gently. "Then you should have asked for help. Not taken it from people." Marla's eyes filled, but pride refused to fall. She turned and walked away, heels clicking like a fading threat. That night, the new HOA board sent a community email. Refunds were being discussed. New rules would require transparency. And all enforcement actions would require documented votes. People cheered in comments. Some cried. Oak Ridge finally felt safe, but Claire knew the real ending wasn't the vote, or the audit, or Marla's downfall. The real twist, the thing nobody expected, was still coming, because a few days later, a letter arrived for Claire. It was from the police academy. Inside was a formal invitation. "Instructor Mason, please attend the next graduation ceremony." Claire smiled quietly. Ethan asked, "Why does that matter?" Claire looked up, eyes shining. "Because Marla will be there." Ethan frowned. "Why?" Claire answered, "Her nephew is graduating. And I'm the one handing him his badge." The final scene was about to begin. The graduation ceremony was held in a bright auditorium, filled with proud families and polished uniforms. Rows of recruits sat tall, nervous, and hopeful. Claire stood at the front, dressed professionally, holding a stack of certificates with calm authority. Ethan sat in the audience, watching her like he was seeing her for the first time again. Then Marla walked in. She wasn't in charge here. No clipboard. No board table. No crowd that feared her. Just a woman sitting quietly in the back row, shoulders tense, trying to disappear, but she couldn't. Because when the ceremony reached the badge presentation, the announcer spoke clearly, "Instructor Claire Mason will present the badges." Applause rose. Claire stepped forward, one by one, recruits walked up. She placed badges carefully, whispering short words of encouragement. Her presence was steady, respectful, powerful. Then a young man approached, Marla's nephew. He looked proud, eyes bright. Claire pinned the badge to his chest and said softly, "Wear it with integrity. Power is never a toy." He nodded, emotional. "Yes, ma'am." The audience clapped again. Marla's hands trembled in her lap. She stared at Claire, frozen, realizing the same woman she tried to humiliate wasn't just connected to police, she shaped them. After the ceremony, Marla waited near the exit. Claire noticed her and walked over calmly. No anger. No victory smile. Marla swallowed. "I didn't know," she whispered. Claire answered gently, "That was the problem. You never tried to know people. You only tried to control them." Marla's eyes filled. "I'm sorry." Claire nodded once. "Apologize to the neighborhood. Not to me." Marla's shoulders collapsed, and for the first time, she looked human, small, tired, humbled. Claire walked away. Not as a hero, but as a reminder, real strength doesn't scream. It stands steady until the truth arrives. Oakridge Estates changed forever after that, and Marla learned the hardest lesson: the people you try to crush might be the ones teaching the world how to stand back up. And that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you loved the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.